Alright, so I've decided that interpolation is a reasonable place to go for the next video. One thing I would also like to mention is I forgot to mention that you can copy and paste keyframes. So in this case, I want to make a sad looping animation where where these like sad little cubes start, say roughly by the origin, wander over somewhere else, and then come back to where they were. So in that case, I need them to be in the same position at frame 40 that they were in frame 1. So I'm just going to right-click on frame 1 and do copy. Go to frame 40, right-click, and do paste. Usually this works pretty well. Sometimes it doesn't so much. Just double check and make sure it's not doing anything weird. I've seen it like shoot your keyframe values kind of strange places. And actually, in the spur of the moment, I've decided that interpolation is not the right place to go with this video. I should tell you how to look at your animations first. All of the indecision. Alright, so there's a few different ways to view your animation, ranging from absolutely horrible and you shouldn't do it, to the best and most accurate way to gauge the timing of whatever you've just been animating. So, I will start with the worst way to do things, which is just scrubbing back and forth through the time slider. This is good for looking at overall motion of things, making sure things are landing where they should. It is not a good way to view speed, because you can see that I can scrub really, really slowly, or like super fast, and you just can't tell what's actually going on. So again, you can do it this way. I've animated this way before I realized there were alternatives, and it's kind of sad. Didn't really work out well. My animations are usually timed pretty awfully. So the second way to look at your animations, which is like the sort of happy middle ground, is using these little playback controls over here, pretty much the same as standard DVD controls. So just hit play, see what happens. Usually, if you've just opened Maya, it's going to do something like, wait for it, it's going to do something like this, where it plays it as fast as possible, and this is not at all accurate to the timing. So there are controls, which you just saw me noodling with, of how to, like, sort of different options for playback speed. So if you go into your time slider, right-click, and there is a little tab called Playback Speed. So again, by default, Maya goes to play every frame free, which is saying I want every frame displayed, and you can play it as fast as possible. I don't care. I'm not looking for, accurate timing of my animation. I just want to see every frame played. I almost never use this option, and by almost never, I mean I don't think I've ever used it. The other two options that I usually use are either play every frame max real time and real time. So play every frame max real time is going to say I want every frame to be displayed, and don't go any faster than the actual speed of the animation. You can go slower, but don't go faster. So this is good, again, if you're prioritizing making sure that every frame kind of flows well, and it might not necessarily give you the real-time speed if your scene is like super complicated, especially if you have sims going on. It's almost never real-time. Or if you just have, a lot of geometry or like other crazy stuff going on, it might not go as fast as real-time, but it's at least not going to go faster. The one I use most frequently is real-time, which will prioritize displaying your animation in the appropriate speed. Usually it's pretty good about this. If your scene is super complicated, it might make like 10 or 15 frame jumps where it goes from frame 5 to frame 20 to maintain that speed. But this one prioritizes speed over viewing every frame. So I'm just going to set this to real time for now. And watch this, and you can see that I have my little boxes just sort of bouncing back and forth randomly on the time slider. And that's pretty much what I was going for. The way to ultimately guarantee that your frames will play at the correct speed you want is to do what's called a play blast. So if I right-click down here in my time slider and just go in the option for play blast, I usually open the settings for this. So you want to just double check like which format you are saving to, encoding, etc., quality. Display size is going to be, so from window is going to be whatever size your viewport is, and it's just going to sort of render that out and save whatever your viewport size is. From render settings would be if you want to ensure that this is like a 1920 by 1080 thing following your particular camera settings. You can set that up in your render settings, and then once you've... Alright. You can set that up in your render settings down here, and then choose from render settings, and it's going to obey whatever those settings are. So that's good, again, if you're looking for something specific and you want to test maybe like the framing of your stuff, not just the speed. Scale will render things smaller or at 100%, so if I set this to 50% and I'm trying to render at full HD, it's going to render basically half that size. So it goes a little bit quicker, but it's smaller. Again, that's just what that setting does. These I honestly usually don't bother about, or these. If you need to save these to a file, which I usually do, it helps me to go back and look at previous iterations, or you need to submit these for your assignments, just do save to file, and you can name this whatever you want. Once you're done, you can just do play blast, and you can see it just did a really, really tiny little rendering. It's going to open that up and show me the video, and this is definitely going to be the most accurate in terms of timing because it's gone through and actually like rendered it out properly. Other thing to note, so by default this is going to save in the movies project or movies folder of wherever you've set your project. If you're like me and you don't use the file project window that dumps all of these random videos in, including the movies folder, I just sort of usually make folders and then just set my scene randomly. Maya will just create a movies folder for you. So don't worry about like where your playblast is going to end up. As long as you've set your project, it will just create a folder and put your stuff there. And it'll be super organized and delightful. So that's playblasting and how to basically the 3 different ways of looking at your animation. So we have the horrible way, which is scrubbing in your time slider, the playback controls over here, and playblasting, which is the most optimal for testing like final speeds of your stuff. So, hopefully that helps. In the next video, I'm actually going to talk about interpolation and the graph editor. Hooray!